Hey, it's Jaime, and welcome to a selects edition of Eventual Millionaire. This is where we go back and find the best of the best, the ones that you loved from the past 6-7 years. We've been doing this a long time, and there's some amazing interviews with amazing guests that you have not seen yet. So we are bringing them back. It is the selects edition. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to the Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Welcome to Eventual Millionaire, and I'm really excited today to have David Allen. He wrote the amazing book called Getting Things Done. I'm sure you've heard of it before. If you haven't, you might have been living under a rock. We like to call him the godfather of productivity. I'm so excited he said yes to come on the show today. Thanks so much for coming on, David.
Sure thing, Jamie. Happy to be here.
So just so you know, the people that are listening to this are either wannabe entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs. And what I would love to know, because you've been doing this for a very long time, do you have any tips, like one or two quick tips on what entrepreneurs can do to really get their schedule better? Because if you know, people that are entrepreneurs have 1,000 ideas and not a lot of productivity habits that we stick with. So do you have any one or two things that we might be able to do?
You know, overall, especially for people who are kind of running their own show and wearing a lot of different hats, it becomes particularly critical that you get the appropriate maps, as I say, to orient yourself. You know, a calendar is a map. Well, how do I orient myself today? You walk in with an agenda for your bank and you've got 7 things you want to go over. That's a map that you use to orient yourself for that experience. So you actually need maps for your life. So getting a map of your business, what are all the things that have your attention? What are all the things you need to pay attention to? And getting all that out of your head, it's really game changing when you do that. It doesn't solve your problems, but it makes them evident. And it makes it a lot easier to then make good intuitive choices about where you ought to be putting your focus and where is okay that you don't put your focus today. As I say, you need to know what you're not doing before you can feel comfortable about what you're not doing. So getting a map of all the things you're not doing. What are all the projects right now that you're not doing if you were listening or watching this? And you better know what that is, otherwise you won't be present with anything that you're doing. And being present, becoming present, so that you're in your zone, you're there, nothing is distracting you, nothing is holding your attention hostage, and you're able to give your full attention to wherever that is, whether that's playing with the dog or writing a business plan. That's really where you want to be, and that's a critical component. That's true for anybody, but it's especially true, and you can really feel that pain if you're an entrepreneur or you're trying to, manage a business while you're trying to start a business.
See, this is the key critical point that I took away from the book too, that I actually recommend to all of most of my clients too. As we're going through, I'm like, you need to get this out of your head, because most entrepreneurs or business owners live in their head, unfortunately. So what sort of advice do you have? Like, I've had people go through, I know on your thing, have sticky notes and write everything out of your head, which I highly recommend and everybody should definitely do. But how do we keep doing that? Because I've done this quite a few times, and so have my clients and so have people I chatted with. We do it, and then somehow we forget about it. And then we, later have to come in and sort of redo the system again. It seems as though we're doing productivity over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's a habit you have to build. So just like learning the banjo or learning the tango or learning Italian, it's going to take you 2 years to really start to make this so that it becomes automatic. You want to become unconscious about this. You don't want to think about your system. You want to be using your system. But until your system really sort of catches up with your own creativity and the kind of systemic process that you really need to manage the complexity of your life, you're going to have to invest in that, and you're going to have to focus on it till you get those habits. One of the biggest problems is that most people don't completely get it out of their head. And so they're still using their head. They're not trusting their system. So until you get 100% out of your head, some part of you is still going to use your psyche as your system to decide who you need to call or what you need to do this afternoon. See, I don't even have any idea who to call because it's all in my system. And I'm not at a phone with time right now. So why should, like Einstein said, why should I be thinking about my phone number? I can look that up. There are better things to think about. So getting used to not trusting that your head is the place to be your system, and that your head is for having ideas, not for holding them, and your intelligence and your intuition are for making choices about your options. But I don't know how long I'm going to be preaching that, but it's really just a mechanical process. Once you understand how the brain doesn't work, then it's just about practice, and keep going. And the more that you start to trust that the system is there, then That just becomes automatic. You would feel uncomfortable keeping stuff in your head. For instance, if I said, "Hey, Jamie, can you meet with me next Thursday at 3:15?" and you go, "Sure." Well, I would imagine that most people would say, I better write that down, right? Because that's the one system that people use fairly consistently and pretty much trust. And that's also not on your mind where you need to be next week, because some part of you trusts that you've got the right data in your calendar and that you'll look at it. So but that's only a 3% of your life. The 97% of your life, same principle applies. Why on earth would you think that your head can keep track of that kind of stuff? And it just doesn't do that very well. So
see, and this is what I wanted to see, because I wanted to talk to somebody who does this, right? Because I talk to a lot of people who adore getting things done, but aren't really using this. I mean, me too, right? Like, I have to admit, I love getting things done and I use a lot of different pieces of it, but keeping up and having it go and not necessarily going like, oh, and there's a new app. Well, let me try this new cool app. I just downloaded the Carrot app, which was really fun, based on getting things done. And it like yells at you, I guess, every time you don't do something. But there's so many cool little changes and things that I haven't gotten to your state, which is, I can't imagine feeling weird about keeping something in my head. So tell me about like what that's like for you to sort of go through a typical day, not like writing things down and not having it all in your head.
Well, I go through my day and I write things down. I don't keep it in my head, right?
That's it. Simple as that.
Right here, this little pad and, 3 or 4 different kind of pens, depends on what kind of pen I want to write the idea with, is right there. My in basket is right over there, so I could show you. Hang on.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Really?
There's my in basket, right? There's a note that I took. Right? Somebody said, "Hey, there's a TEDx you ought to look at, and there's something else I need to do." So that's written down. It's over there. I mean, why on earth would I want to keep that in my head? There's a lot better things to do. Yeah. So, it just becomes habitual. It becomes that's the way I live my life. And I don't write everything down. Heavens no. A lot of times I'm just grazing, like right now. Hi, I don't need to write down our conversation. But if you said, "Hey, David, here's a really way cool app that you ought to try and test out," and if I think, I might, that's exactly that's why whenever I'm anywhere and there's a flat surface, longer than 15 minutes, I got a pad and a pen, because God knows when the bell's going to ring or the lightning will strike or whatever, and it comes from the strangest places. So most of the things I've created in my life were random thoughts that started in that way. I throw away probably 90% of them. Because when I'm having the thought, I'm not sure what it's going to mean. So if I force myself to figure out what a thought means and what I'm going to do with it, I'll stop having thoughts because it's too much trouble. So I've just lowered the barrier to entry to think about anything that might be potentially meaningful. I don't know whether I'm going to go look at that TEDx or not. Don't force me to decide that yet. But when I'm ready to sit down and make decisions about what to do, that's when I don't want to have to remember what I've thought of. I want to now, take what I've thought and put it in front of me and then be an executive about that. What does this mean? Where does this go? Is this reference? Is this trash? Is there actually something I want to do with this? And that's the, stage 2 of the getting things done process. The first one is to capture the thoughts. And the second one then is to not, as you notice, there's not much in that in basket. That will get emptied. So that I don't maintain a big backlog. My backlog I zero out as often as I can, because that makes it much more evident when I've got new ideas that then they still need to have meaning determined about them. So, the whole system is about externalizing potentially meaningful stuff, deciding what that stuff really means, and then parking the results of it in appropriate places. That's how you keep nothing on your mind.
So simple, but not easy. Definitely. So what do you do?
It is simple and it is easy. What's difficult is changing your habit. I think keeping stuff in your head gives you a false sense of control.
I can totally agree with that one. So do you think, though, that it takes a certain type of person to be able to do all of that, or it's just a habit and that's it?
It takes a kind of a person who wants to have nothing on their mind and wants to get rid of all that distracting pull that's going on in their head. And that can be anybody, but It's mostly people that want to get rid of drag on your system. See, interestingly, it's the most productive people that create the most stress because they create a lot of blowback from their creativity and their productivity, and their systems haven't caught up with them. So a lot of what GTD did was to give them a way to make sure that that blowback is handled very rapidly. So it gets rid of the drag and residue on your system that you're creating by your creativity. That's why it's the most productive people and the people who need GTD the least that are the most attracted to it.
Interesting. Okay, can you tell me about like how that would work in a scenario for somebody who maybe doesn't have GTD beforehand, and then what it looks like afterwards?
Well, a good friend of mine, a rock guitarist who's got his, is running a publishing studio now, Evan Taubenfeld. He was Avril Lavigne's guitarist, and Evan's a big champion of my stuff. He said, David, before GTD, I started 150 songs a year. He said, after GTD, I finished 150 songs a year.
Okay, that's huge. Okay, that's amazing.
That is huge.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't you use, I'm looking at all your stuff and I have an inbox over here, but why don't you have like digital? Like, why are we paper and you have paper and pencil and everything with you?
Because paper doesn't need a wireless connection, and it has, the batteries inside of a pen and paper, last a long time. And you can write on anything, anywhere, at any time. I can still use digital. As a matter of fact, I can call an 800 number for TalkScribe and leave a message, and in 5 minutes it's transcribed and in my email. I can text myself something out of my phone into my email account. I mean, there are a lot of ways you can collect stuff, but why bother? Because what I'm putting in there is not going to be the permanent thing I'm going to keep track of, very, very likely.
Okay, because you give it a second once over before you put it back in your system.
I need to think of what it means and what I'm going to do about it. Hey, I need to call, Bill Smith, I can go right to my calls list and put it on there. There are things that I can rapidly decide what I want to do and park it in there. But for the most part, I want to rethink the stuff. Let me grab it and then let me run back through it. And that's the problem, is most people don't make the distinction between collecting and organizing. They're they're very different things.
Okay. Can you just describe it so that way we can make sure we have the distinction?
Sure. Well, collecting is just grabbing notes, and then I don't have to think about what I'm going to do about it or how important it is. I just want to grab it as a raw piece of something to then think about. Then when I'm sitting down and ready to empty my in-basket, okay, now is where I have to, that's going to force me to say, okay, David, what the heck are you going to do with this? Are you serious about this? What does this really mean? And again, that requires a different kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. See, the sort of the entrepreneur, visionary, crazy maker part of me has a gazillion ideas. Right, but then the chief operating officer part of me has to go, what the heck was that, David? What a dumb idea. What are you thinking? What were you thinking or drinking, when you wrote that down? So we have both, and both of those parts of us need to have their own, their own patterns. If you only have one, you might be talking to a lot of people that are the crazy maker type, so that the visionary, and they need to bring the discipline of you cannot do 75 things. How about you pick 5? That's the part of us that, and different people will be more or less comfortable with one side of that or the other. So the sort of the highly operational, results-oriented, let's make critical thinking, that's going to be, some people are more that way, and they need to potentially have more vision, take more risks, be willing to stretch out a little more. But the visionaries and the crazy makers need to, they're the ones who have to focus a good bit more on the discipline of deciding the triage, how important really is that. And by the way, if you haven't collected and captured every single thing that you're committed to so that you can see that regularly, you'll always overcommit. So
okay.
You'll be living in overwhelm.
Which so many people are. So how do we do that though? Because I've done it before.
But the world is not overwhelmed. Look around. The world is fine. So where does overwhelm fit? It's in the air.
It totally is. But how do I do that? Because so I've had 1,000, I use sticky notes, right? And I've had thousands of sessions of tons of them all over the place, in my inbox, all that fun stuff. And then I take them with me and I try to write them down.
Throw them away.
Well, no. I don't take so I take my plain ones with me so I can write them down in other places. But I don't ever feel like I can get all of them. I'm so thankful that you are here to tell me that it is possible to have everything out of your head, because
Sure.
I didn't know that was possible. Even for you, I was like, well, before I chatted with him, how much does he really have out of his head? You have everything out of your head. How do I get extract everything out of my head?
Get it all out of your head. It's not hard. Just sit down and say, hey, because they'll only pop up one at a time, so keep going till it stops. It might take you a couple of hours.
And then what? Okay. But my brain is constant, always. And sometimes I don't have something, and I have small children, and so I have a good idea, and then children need things, etc.
Sure.
So life
That's
gets
why
in the way.
Keep pads all the way around you.
Okay.
Yeah, at every phone, keep it at every flat surface. And of course, I carry my note-taker wallet with me, which is, or keep a 3x5 card, keep the pads with you.
Okay. So traveling.
And Jaime, give yourself a break. Say, hey, I got nothing to write it down. I'll just let it show up again if it does, and if it doesn't, that's fine. Let it go. So, there is a kind of a Zen detachment from data called don't get too attached to all that stuff.
I appreciate that. Good.
So, in any case, it's not worth worrying. That doesn't solve anything.
I love how Zen you are. Okay, so good.
No, I'm old. That's all.
That's different. Okay, good. So can I get that? Can I have what you have, even though I'm young and have small kids and blah, blah, blah? Can I feel that
Sure.
Zen?
Hey, look, the solution is absolutely inevitable. It's called you get older every day.
I don't want to wait for that. That seems like I have to wait.
It's happening right now. You don't need to wait,
See, I love this. So what happens when you're traveling, if you're in an airport and you don't have your inbox? Do you have a system that you travel with to put all
Sure.
your notes in an inbox? Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I've got, I travel with, usually I'm traveling with a To Me briefcase like this, and what sits on the outside pocket is a red folder called In. So that every single piece of paper, every single receipt, every single business card, every single business meeting note, everything goes in there. So that's the virtual or portable version of that collection tool. Because if you do any kind of business travel, just receipts will eat you alive. Not to mention all the business cards you write on and capture, and all the notes from your hotel room pad that you wrote on. That's crazy.
It is a little insane. I have Shoeboxed, which is an app on my phone where I take a picture, but then sometimes it doesn't work. And so some receipts I have don't have pictures taken and some do. And it's very confusing. So you don't even deal with any of that stuff. Just at once you put everything in there.
I use Turbo Scan on my iPhone. I'll do that stuff too. But again, you digifreaks, if it ain't complete and you don't trust it, you won't use it.
Let's talk about that trust, because I think that's a really key point too. If we don't trust the system, we won't use it. Tell me more about that.
If you don't trust the system, you won't use it.
I knew you were going to say that.
What else is there to say? Well, that's the problem, is that a lot of people, as soon as there's something that you can't, what if you didn't trust your calendar? What if you didn't trust that you put something in there that it would stick? Right? How critical would that be? You've got to have an absolutely trusted place. That's why if you don't trust you'll empty your in basket, you're still not going to get stuff out of your head by writing it down. Because some part of you is not going to trust that you will loop around soon enough to pick it up. So your head's going to go, don't forget, Jaime, don't forget. Hey, you got a thing. The problem is...
How do you know what my head sounds like? No.
Well, if it actually did sound like that, it'd be a lot easier because you'd shut it up. The problem is it goes subliminal very fast. And now you have the pressure, but you don't know the source. You just have this noise inside of your brain. Have you ever been in a room where there was a noise going on, but you didn't know it because it was so incessant, and you didn't know it was there until it stopped? That's what my stuff does. And most people don't realize they're in a room that's got noise in it because they live in that noise. They think that's the way it is.
And we hear the words like stressed and overwhelmed and all that stuff, and those are sort of the accumulation of that stuff that's in our brain that we still have.
Yes, look around the world. Do you see that does the world look stressed? Does the world look overwhelmed? It doesn't look confused.
See, I remember saying, doing a thing about productivity and chatting with someone and saying, if you had nothing, think of your schedule tomorrow. Imagine if you couldn't do anything. You had nothing on your schedule. You didn't have to eat. You didn't have to walk. You didn't have to do anything. You just sat there in a room. How stressed and overwhelmed would you be? And it's Right. Like nothing to do, nothing at all. Of course, that stress would go away, but it's so much different in real life, right? And so it's amazing to be able to see you and being able to deal with actual real life and having that sort of Zen state of mind, which is very inspiring.
Well, it is a kind of a paradox in that if you're here to actually do things, you have to be appropriately engaged with doing in order to be. So a lot of people, I want to go be, I said, fine, just go be. But as soon as you have to do something, whatever that is, and we seem to be intentional beings. So we're here to have, to grow, to express, to expand to something. I mean, you can't stop, right? So whatever it is that's your intentionality there, if you don't appropriately engage with what that's bringing for you, and it could very well be, I need to start my own business. So you need to now appropriately engage with that inspiration or that drive. And so being appropriately engaged with it is what then allows you to be peaceful with it. So you don't have to go very far to see where to apply this stuff. Just start to notice what has your attention. Because if you don't give appropriate attention to what has your attention, it'll start to take more of your attention than it deserves. So, in other words, I need cat food should pop into your head once. As soon as it pops in twice, you are not appropriately engaged with your commitment about your cat or your cat food, right?
Yeah.
So to appropriately engage, I need to capture something. I need to decide what it means to me. I need to park it against all the other commitments I've got, and I need to constantly keep reassessing against that game. So I'm the hardest working guy you ever saw about how to constantly stay involved and engaged with all the different possible things I could be doing. It doesn't look like it right now because it doesn't take but a few seconds a day because the system is complete and it's relatively current. And once a week, I bring up the rear guard by doing a weekly review and making sure I grab it all because it's slippery stuff. But I have to work at that. But, I've got 67.6 years of practice.
That's what I wanted to hear, though, that you actually have to work on it a little bit, too, because that's what I was going to ask. How do we build the habit, especially, like, I'm pretty analytical mindset, so I assumed, I like having things organized and stuff. I would assume it would be a little bit easier for me, but it's still kind of difficult, especially GTD is a very wide system of many different pieces. And so implementing all of them and creating a habit seems overwhelming, right?
It's not that many pieces. There are 9 different, categories of stuff. You have reference material, you have projects you need to be reminded of to finish, you have action steps about those projects you need to keep track of. You have incubate, I need to hold on this until 2 weeks from now or 3 days from now or review someday maybe stuff on a consistent basis. So there are actually not that many things. It's not that difficult. And, when you say it's about, there's so many things, well, yeah, your life includes buy cat food, get a career, call Bill, launch the ad campaign, get a car, research a new cell phone. Yeah, life's like that. Mm-hmm. It's funny, people get mad at me for their list. I'm sorry, it ain't my list. Your only choice is where you keep track of your commitments and how thoroughly you engage with them appropriately, so that some part of you says that's okay, then I'm not doing that, and right now, and I need to constantly keep reassessing on that. So it is common sense, and it is, you do need to have as a system that is complete as your commitments are. It's kind of that simple.
Mm. So if we trust our calendar. Because I'm thinking about what you have, and if I trust my system, I guess that's more or less part of the issue that I have. I think most people have in general. I have a system that I use. I don't use it to the extent, but I'm wondering, like, for someone, as we're going, like a calendar, totally trust my calendar. I remember one day I accidentally imported another calendar and it screwed everything up, and I couldn't trust my calendar, and that was really bad. So, but we're daily pretty much running on systems we don't trust, that don't have, like you're saying, everything in them. So therefore we can't trust them. So therefore we can't do it. How can we trust our system? I get the point of, trying to take as much information, everything out of our head, putting it in the system. But how do we get in the habit of actually using that system on a consistent basis? Because as soon as I travel, or as soon as somebody travels for a while and doesn't use the system, or comes up with a stumbling block and we stop, the whole thing usually goes away for a while until we pick it back up again.
They're two sort of key things. Well, we call it the 5 I's. First of all, you have information, about GTD. Okay, here's what it is, and maybe some inspiration to test it out, find out more about it. Then you have the instruction. So then I need to get instruction about how do I do that, and the book gives that plenty of that instruction. Lots of ways to get it, or you could get coached by one of our coaches. And then you have installation. Now, okay, now I see how to do that. Now let me structure the thing. So let me create the blueprint, and here's where I'm going to put the lists, and you build a structure, and then you install that. The installation. I build the structure, and I park stuff in it. And then you have the implementation where you actually start continue to use the system and continue to put stuff in it. And then finally you just are integrated so that becomes habitual. So that's the stages of sort of implementing this stuff. So what you're talking about is you've probably done some degree of installation and some degree of implementing. So the first, there are two big keys, practically speaking. First of all is give yourself a weekend to actually sit down and get as much as you can out of your head and do as complete an install as you can. And then the second thing is to build in a 2-hour period at the end of every week for a weekly review where you bring up the rear guard and catch up again. Because the world's going to come at us all a lot faster than you can keep it pristinely captured and processed and organized as it's coming at you. But you don't want to let it go too long before you, as I say, bring up the rear guard and catch all that stuff. So, so it's very easy to fall off this game. It's very easy to get back on. All you have to do is sit down, get it out of your head again, decide what's the next action on this, park it in an appropriate list, and keep going. So you just, you fall on, you go off, you go off. If you don't fall off of this at least 6 times a day, you're not playing a big enough game.
Thank you. Okay, good.
No, really. But you need to know what the game is so that you can get back on it. That you don't want to stay off. That's the problem. People fall off and then they stay off and then they live in their psyche, and their psyche has no sense of past or future. So as soon as you got 2 things going on simultaneously in there, which you can't do, it's trying to multitask because it doesn't trust any other place, and the psyche just doesn't work that well. As soon as you give yourself 2 things to do and your head's the only place that's got it, you've created failure and stress because you can't do them both at the same time. That's just a mechanical process. So at least if you understand that cognitively, okay, now let me just keep coming back and getting stuff out of my head again until you start to get used to it. Once you get used to having nothing on your head, by the way, that's a very cool place to be.
Oh, I love that you say that. Okay, good inspiration for everyone that we can actually live in that place. But it sounds like it might be, is it commitment to is it commitment to this system? That's what we need? Like, where do we need to work on this so that way we continue to do it?
Are you committed to brushing your teeth and taking showers?
Hopefully, yeah. No, yeah. Yes, I am.
Well, it's that kind of commitment. It's like that, I gotta go commit. No, you just have to take a shower. Why the scuzz factor gets too high if you don't?
Well, because so that's it, right? So I could start being like, wow, I really need to take a shower. I don't want to be around people. So the consequences seem high. The consequences, though, for getting things done in my head isn't that high because that's the way I've always lived it. Right?
Correct.
So how do I fix that?
The same way you started to take showers and brush teeth. You didn't want to do that when you were born. You didn't even have teeth when you were born, right? The authorities just kept making you do it until at some point you went in and did it by yourself because you couldn't stand not doing it. You got to get used to it. So you got to just stick around. Get around people who do this. Reread my book. It'll be a different book every time you read it. Get around that. So that's my job. That's what I've done in terms of my career. Is I'm really an educator, perhaps a little bit of a motivator, though I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm somebody that's going to turn you off. Because I'm a disorganization guy. I call, hey guys, the way you've been organized, give it up. It doesn't work. So I'm not out there trying to. Passion is highly overrated. You'll get depressed as fast as you get passionate about something.
Really?
The best thing to do is get 1 or 2, hopefully people are just being bored stupid by what I'm saying right now, but catch 1 or 2 things I'm saying and they actually go start to do that a little bit. So you start to raise the bar internally about what you're used to and what you're used to doing.
Are you passionate about GTD anymore? I mean, you've been doing it for such a long time.
Well, I can't stop. I mean, it's kind of like, are you passionate about taking a shower? Are you passionate about being a nice person? Well, I guess, but I can still do GTD when I feel like crap. So you don't need to be passionate to get stuff out of your head.
That's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad you're still able to do it even when it goes down. Like it's such a thing for you.
It was like, yeah. And you take showers when things go down, sometimes it's a little harder than others, and sometimes so it's not really about the content. It's really about the process. And the content can be more or less inspiring, more or less challenging. GTD doesn't get rid of your challenges. Heavens no. If you didn't have challenges, you wouldn't grow or expand or express yourself. So it's not about getting rid of all those problems or issues or challenges. It's about getting a clear deck internally so that you're more available to then bring all your resources to bear. And when you feel like when you've got the flu and feel like crap, you still need all your resources to bear just to get out of bed. So it's not about always being happy, heavens, but you don't have to even like your life to get it off your mind.
That's a great quote. Okay, good. I love that. So what does your head look like? Because I meditate and stuff like that.
I can't see. You can see.
Beautiful. I love this interview. Okay. So, but inside, right, we meditate. Things come up all the time, right? Are you better at sort of dealing with nothing in your head because your brain is so used to just giving it what it needs and that's it?
Yeah, you can't really have nothing on your mind if you're conscious. Really. I mean, you're always going to be you're always going to have something focused there, mentally. But, there's the mental aspect of things, and there's then what I call the spiritual aspect of things, which is actually a different level. Because, many times your inspiration will come from something that's not my mental thinking. It may come from your intuition or some other place. Who knows, and I've got my own working hypotheses about that. But the truth is that I want to be free to not have to have something distracting or holding that attention hostage. So I want to be able to put it where I want it to go. By the way, I will keep a pad and pen by me when I meditate, because many times when you start to relax and so the universe is always on. It's always on. The universe is not stopping. So meditation is not about going into nothing or to quiet. It's about quieting a part of the universe so you can listen to another part, right? So it's like, okay, so which part of the universe are you listening to? The really noisy one out here, or do you want to listen to a really noisy one in here? You want to freak people out. It's like, hey, what if absolutely nothing was on your mind? Most people just get really freaky because it's like, oh God, but suddenly all the demons are going to then run across the barrier into your head that you haven't allowed yourself to be thinking about, but they're still there. So, I oftentimes will just to keep my head, it's like people that learn to keep a pad by their bed so they don't keep waking up at night thinking, oh my God, I need to, hey, write it down. So in the morning you can, so then turn around and go to sleep. So in a way, it's the same thing. You're just keeping it clean. It's like you're keeping it swept. You're keeping it, we call it a mind sweep. Just get it out of your head. So, sometimes it's helpful for people to get the image of psychic RAM. RAM being the short-term memory space that can fill up and clog up, and suddenly everything just slows down. And they've now proven it. And a lot of the psychologists, a lot of the neuropsychologists have now done enough experiments they say, gee, we've now proven, that what David said from all of his street smarts was really true. Trying to keep a lot of stuff in your head diminishes your ability to keep anything, to think well. And they've proven that.
I love that. You're like, I knew this a long time ago. Data is finally catching up with what I already knew. That's awesome. A great place to be. Yeah. So you meditate. So tell me what you get out of meditating. Because if you're not stressed and stuff like that, what are you looking to do if you don't mind me getting so personal?
I'm stressed all the time. Are you kidding? Life is stressful. Noise is stressful. I love massages. I just had my chiropractor worked on me. I was like, so great. So I think just living in the world creates there's an ambient stress factor that's going to happen no matter what. Good. So it's not that you get rid of stress. I mean, again, if you didn't have any stress, you'd never grow or expand or whatever. And as soon as you want something to be true that's not true, you've created stress. You've created a dissonance. Now, that's not a bad thing. If I want to be out of the room, and I'm not out of the room, there's a delta. Well, I now have a vision that's not matched by reality. I get out of the room in order to relax. So it's every time you create something that's not true yet, or that you have a creative idea or a creative intention, you create what the fancy word is cognitive dissonance. So in a way, we're living in a stressful world. You just want to be appropriately engaged with that. So as long as I'm appropriately engaged with getting out of the room, then that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. If I say I want to be out of the room, oh damn, but I want to be here on this, but I can't do. Oh no, now that's Ulcerville, because now I can't be appropriately engaged with both things So it's so what? So I'm constantly, stretching, having ideas, stuff that I'd like to have true that's not true yet. So I'm constantly living in that. So it takes work, and not in a hard way, but it takes, let's say, concern and intentionality to keep myself as relaxed as possible, so that I stay as healthy as possible.
So
in
it's
that way.
relaxation, because I was going to say, how do we do that? Like, is it relaxation? Is it noticing your thoughts in the back of your head? Okay.
Sure. Yeah. Pay attention to what has your attention. Because there's an inverse relationship between on your mind and getting done. So anything that keeps bothering. Now, if on your mind is because you're doing creative thinking and you're adding value by what you're thinking about, that's one thing, but that's not what's on most people's mind. As a matter of fact, whatever's occurred to anybody listening to this while I've been talking and while you've been talking, wherever their minds may have gone that had nothing to do with this, is probably wasn't adding value to what they were thinking about. They were probably going, oh God, I need to, or oh, there's a thing. And what it's just a representative of, if there are some decisions about that situation they haven't made, or they haven't parked the results in some trusted place. And that's why things are on your mind. It's not a bad thing. It's just that's a message. That there's decisions about that you haven't made yet. You're not appropriately engaged with it. Cat food pops into your head more than once. Hey, that should be a signal. Gee, I need to talk to my banker. Pops into your head more than once. That's a signal. You have not appropriately engaged with whatever that thing was about yet. And that's not bad. It's not a negative judgment. It's just data, just information.
I love that. Okay. I'm actually reading a book that I read called Untethered Soul, which I don't know if you've read it before, by Michael Singer. It's actually right up the same thing, where we're paying attention to the person that is thinking, which isn't exactly us either, because the person that's thinking, we can see that person, which is kind of crazy. But that's exactly what you're saying, is you're like, there's thoughts coming in, and then there's someone being aware of those thoughts coming in, or something, or whatever, getting a little technical. But you're paying attention to what that is, and all you're doing is sort of putting it down the right chute, right?
Exactly.
Is this, okay. And that makes a lot more sense. So listening to you talk about stress, I'm hearing that there's a distinction between stress and overwhelm, though, because I hear people use them as if they're very similar, but correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm getting from you is that if stress could be a good thing and that just happens and comes up and we just have to manage that appropriately, but then overwhelm is where everything else is still living in our head and our head is almost overwhelmed. Is that sort of the distinction that you would make too? Yeah,
that's a way to think about it. That's a good way to frame it. It's most of the stress comes from your inner conflict. You're not keeping agreements with yourself. So you can be stressed about something and agreeing with yourself how you're going to then engage with whatever that thing is. And so then you'll be in alignment and appropriately engaged to be relieving that stress, or doing what that stress is now telling you need to be doing. The fire alarm goes off. Absolutely, you better admit that there's going to be stress happening, which then, in order to resolve that stress, I'm going to be moving towards some outcome called live, don't burn up, and therefore I'm going to start engaging, adrenaline and all kinds of things are going to show up very appropriately. So, so that's as opposed to, well, gee, I know that, but I don't want to do that, but I can't do both of them. Oh gosh, I think I'll sit here and do nothing, but no, I should be doing something. Oh, damn.
Okay, that's okay. Let's talk about that for just a minute, because that's the thing that we get. And that's the thing I hear too. A lot of people just want to veg out, like they want to run away from all the crazy thoughts that they have in their head instead of appropriately dealing with them, right? And so we'll go and do something like that instead, and then the overwhelm sort of happens. So do you have advice, like instead of vegging, right? We need to be paying attention in the now and paying attention to our thoughts, right?
Yeah, just dump all the stuff out of your head.
Yeah.
Hey, go grab a pen and paper and just unload.
Right now, do it. Okay, beautiful.
I mean, journaling is a way to do that on a more subtle level.
Okay.
Sometimes I'll journal in the morning or before I meditate, which is really nice. It's another way to say, okay, here's kind of just a current reality. I'll just do a sort of a core dump about what's going on in my life or whatever, and I don't pay much attention to it at all. Later on, I hardly ever go back and read it, but just the process itself of externalizing what you're thinking about, can produce a kind of relaxation, in a way that you won't otherwise if it keeps banging around in your psyche.
Yeah, and it might not even be that important. Okay. So how often do you meditate?
Daily, usually.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask how long?
Can be, to some degree. I've consciously been doing that for let's see. Well, for about, 45 years. So, that you get to a point where, you can stop it in 2 seconds. You can do that. But, oftentimes taking enough time to let the spin unravel and slow down can be 20 minutes, half an hour, 45 minutes.
Depending.
Yeah.
Oh, I could chat with you for way too long. Okay, I need to start wrapping up. I'm going to ask you the last question. I kind of have a feeling on what this already is going to be, but I'm going to ask it to you anyway. What's one action that listeners can take this week to help them with their goal of $1 million?
Imagine what your ideal life would look, sound, or feel like. What would a Sunday afternoon be? And give yourself permission to take an hour and truly write out the biggest fantasy about what you would like to be doing, experiencing, having, being, or whatever, if you haven't done that lately. And that will be the biggest driver for, getting you where you want to go. If you want to get there, you need to define the there. And give yourself permission to not put that in concrete, but let that be a useful illusion right now. Because, the future ideal scenes and goals, the future never happens, really. It's always today. But it's a handy illusion because what it will do is it'll start to reframe your experience right now. So you give yourself permission to go ideal scene, and that will start to change your perception and your performance right away. So the power of focus, and that's a lot of what GTD was about and why I discovered it and how I use it, is to be able to keep myself as clear as I can so that in that space I have the ability to create as freely and as cool as I would like, and to be able to have room to access that creativity from wherever that may be coming. But it's really about the creative process more than anything else. So, I don't get organized to be organized. I get organized to free space so that I can then utilize the power of that focus. So, that's if there were one thing to do, it's just, keep a vision, in your head and available to you. The risk of the visionary is being willing to hold a picture before you see how to get there. But you won't see how to do it until you see yourself doing it.
I love that. Huge benefits of GTD, definitely. I have one follow-up question for that, though, too. Once we create that vision, what do we do with it? Should we read it often? It tends to get lost in places. Even if we put it in our system, it tends to get lost. What should we do with it after? If
I were you, I would put it in, those kinds of things for myself, I drop it randomly in my tickler file. Oh. If you look at it too, one way to go absolutely numb and unconscious about inspiring things is put it on your bulletin board. Because you really need to approach it with a fresh energy. So when they're in my tickler file, they show up randomly. And so they land in my tickler file on some random basis. When they do, then it's like, okay, let me pay attention for 30 seconds to this and actually make it an active process.
I love that. And it's funny, I'm thinking digitally how I can do that. I'm going to email it to myself a couple of random times. That's funny. Good to know. Awesome. Sure. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate it. Where can we find more about you online?
davidco.com. Lots of stuff there.
Definitely. And everybody, if they haven't yet, because I bet everybody in the world has probably read GTD, but if they haven't yet, they should pick it up, and I'll definitely link to the book too. Highly recommend it. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, David.
Thanks, Jamie. It was fun.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that interview. And if you want to check out more amazing resources, I'm only curating the best of the best. Go check out eventualmillionaire.com. You can take the Eventual Millionaire quiz, figure out where you are in business and what you need right now. Plus, you can look at curated resources specifically for you on the new Start Here page. I'm so excited. Please join us. Please let me know if you need anything at all. I'm here for you. And have a fantastic day. Bye.